Tonight, Buckingham Palace is frantically attempting to control the narrative surrounding what may very well be the most quietly dramatic power move in modern royal history. Behind closed doors, in an ancient, unrecorded chamber deep within the royal estate, King Charles executed a secret maneuver that left every senior advisor, constitutional expert, and high-ranking courtier completely speechless. There were no press teams present, no official camera crews were invited, no advance notices were dispatched to news networks, but sitting silently beside the historic throne was an object that was never supposed to be there, a second golden crown. And when Charles stepped forward into the dim light, he did not look toward Prince William. He turned directly to Catherine, Princess of Wales, and made a monumental decision that fundamentally alters who holds the true power inside the British monarchy today. To comprehend why this secret gathering has sent seismic shockwaves through the entire royal household, you have to picture the tense atmosphere inside that room. Charles had requested the presence of an incredibly tight, hand-selected group of individuals. Among them were veteran constitutional scholars, key household officials who have served the crown for decades, and a few high-ranking members of the inner family. Not a single person in attendance had been issued a formal agenda. Catherine arrived quietly through a private entrance, wearing a simple, tailored dark coat, carrying herself with that steady, iron composure that has come to define her entire public existence. But the exact moment King Charles walked into the hall, the energy in the room shifted instantly. Witnesses described a heavy, almost suffocating stillness hanging in the air, the unmistakable quiet that always precedes an absolute collapse of the status quo. Charles stood at the head of the room. He looked visibly weathered by his relentless health battles and months of demanding cancer treatments, yet his eyes reflected an absolute, unshakable resolve, moving with a deliberate, solemn pace that proved this was no sudden emotional whim. He reached over to the table and lifted that second crown. But he didn't place it onto Catherine's head in a traditional theatrical coronation gesture. Instead, with extreme care, he lowered the physical weight of the crown onto her shoulders. In the ancient language of royal symbolism, resting a crown on someone's shoulders isn't about granting a temporary title. It is the formal, historic gesture of transferring the actual physical burden, the emotional responsibility, and the moral leadership of the entire realm. The room went completely dead silent. Nobody gasped, nobody dared to applaud, and no courtier had the courage to break the heavy silence. Everyone present recognized the terrifying magnitude of what they had just witnessed. In a single unrecorded moment, King Charles had executed a psychological shift that defied decades of palace protocol. If you are following this extraordinary, high-stakes transformation inside the British royal family, take a second right now to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and join us here at Crown Watch so you never miss a single breaking breakdown from behind palace walls. Now, to truly understand why King Charles felt compelled to make such a drastic, unprecedented move, we have to trace the harrowing timeline of events that pushed the House of Windsor to this breaking point. The story doesn't begin in that secret room, it begins in early 2024, when the foundation of the monarchy was rocked by back-to-back medical catastrophes. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace dropped a bombshell announcement that sent shockwaves across the globe. King Charles had been diagnosed with an undisclosed form of cancer following a routine procedure. For a monarch who had waited over 7 decades to ascend the throne, the diagnosis was a cruel, devastating blow. Charles was forced to immediately withdraw from public-facing duties, retreating behind palace walls to undergo grueling outpatient treatments while attempting to manage state papers in isolation. The public shock was still reverberating when, just weeks later, in March 2024, the world stood completely still. Catherine, Princess of Wales, released an emotional, self-shot video sitting alone on a wooden bench in the gardens of Windsor Castle. Dressed in a casual striped sweater with daffodils blooming behind her, she delivered the heartbreaking news that she too had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing preventative chemotherapy. The sheer psychological weight of both the reigning monarch and the future queen fighting life-threatening illnesses simultaneously pushed the British monarchy into its most dangerous operational vacuum since the abdication crisis of 1936. Behind the grand facades of Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, panic set in among senior courtiers. The public calendar was stripped clean. Prince William was forced to split his time between caring for his recovering wife, shielding his 3 young children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, from media frenzy, and stepping up to represent his ailing father at official state functions. The institution felt dangerously frail, stripped down to a handful of working royals who were visibly exhausted under the relentless pressure. During those dark months, King Charles spent long periods in quiet reflection at his Highgrove estate in Gloucestershire. Those who know the king well reveal that his perspective on the monarchy underwent a profound transformation during his recovery. Charles has always been a deeply spiritual and philosophical man, keenly aware of history and his own mortality. As he endured the physically draining effects of his medical treatments, he began evaluating the institution not through the lens of centuries-old rigid traditions, but through the lens of modern survival. He realized a sobering truth that many veteran palace officials had overlooked for years. A monarchy cannot survive on legal decrees, ancient line of succession charts, or constitutional technicalities alone. In the 21st century, the survival of the crown depends entirely on an emotional contract with the public. A king can hold the legally recognized crown, but if the people do not feel a personal, empathetic connection to the royal family, the golden throne becomes nothing more than an expensive relic. And as Charles looked at the state of his family, he recognized that the single strongest bridge connecting the public's heart to the crown was not himself, nor even his dutiful heir William. It was Catherine. Consider what Catherine accomplished during her darkest hour. When she sat on that garden bench in Windsor, she dismantled decades of cold, distant royal PR in less than 3 minutes. She didn't stand behind a formal mahogany lectern wrapped in royal crests. She didn't read from an official palace decree written by gray-suited advisors. She spoke directly to the camera as a human being, a mother terrified for her young children, and a woman confronting her own mortality. In doing so, she unlocked a level of global empathy that the royal family had not experienced in generations. When Catherine announced in September 2024 that she had completed her chemotherapy treatment and subsequently confirmed her full remission in early 2026, the global response was overwhelming. Millions of people who had grown indifferent or cynical toward the monarchy found themselves personally invested in her recovery. Her return to royal duties wasn't just a relief for her family, it was a life-saving shot of adrenaline for the entire institution. As 2026 progressed, the dynamics within the royal household began to evolve rapidly, while Charles's medical team carefully managed his workload, confirming by mid-2026 that his treatment schedule was moving into a steady precautionary phase. The king began quietly restructuring how authority was distributed behind the scenes. He started observing Catherine's public engagements with intense scrutiny. Every time she stepped out, whether visiting children's hospitals, attending solemn national memorial services, or hosting private charity roundtables, the public reaction was magnetic. Take, for instance, her unannounced visit to Charing Cross Hospital in London alongside Prince William, or her solo reception at Buckingham Palace for the England women's rugby team. At every event, Catherine demonstrated a unique ability to combine royal dignity with genuine, unscripted warmth. During an engagement at Evelina London Children's Hospital, when a young girl asked her if she was the Queen, Catherine didn't correct her with formal royal protocol about titles and lines of succession. She simply smiled, knelt down to eye level, and connected with the child on a human level. That small moment spoke volumes to King Charles. It proved that in the eyes of the public, Catherine already carried the spiritual dignity of a queen, long before any formal coronation. Recognizing this extraordinary shift, Charles took a series of unprecedented official steps throughout 2025 and 2026 to elevate Catherine's structural authority. For the first time in over 116 years, not since Queen Mary in 1910, a Princess of Wales was officially granted the power to issue royal warrants. Royal warrants are prestigious seals of approval granted to British businesses that supply goods or services to the royal household. They carry immense commercial value and economic influence. By bestowing this power upon Catherine, Charles wasn't merely giving her a ceremonial honor, he was handing her direct influence over Britain's economic and commercial royal endorsements. It was a massive, concrete signal that Catherine was being integrated into the core executive machinery of the sovereign state. Yet, despite these official honors, the fundamental problem remained. The traditional structure of palace authority was too slow to adapt to the reality of the king's health and the public's demands. Inside the corridors of Kensington Palace and Highgrove, whispers began to circulate about how the monarchy would navigate the coming years. Charles is acutely aware that at his age, combined with the ongoing monitoring of his health condition, every single day counts. He could not afford to leave the future of the crown to chance, nor could he allow rigid administrative red tape to keep Catherine sidelined in a secondary role while the institution faced public scrutiny. To understand the legal and psychological distinction, we must look at how royal authority is structured under British constitutional law. Legally, the king cannot simply abdicate a portion of his sovereign duties to a Princess of Wales without complex parliamentary legislation, such as invoking Regency Acts or altering the letters patent. Prince William remains the sovereign heir, first in line to the throne. Should Charles become incapacitated, William is the designated legal regent. Nothing Charles did in that private room alters the legal line of succession. Prince William will eventually be crowned king, and Prince George will eventually take his place as the heir. 3. However, Charles understands that formal legal power is utterly useless without moral authority. What happened in that room was an act of psychological coronation. By placing the physical weight of that golden crown onto Catherine's shoulders in front of his most trusted advisors, Charles bypassed bureaucratic politics. He established an unwritten, ironclad mandate within the royal household. Catherine is not merely a supportive consort in waiting, she is the operational co-anchor of the modern British monarchy. Sources close to the royal household reveal that the advisors sitting in that room were utterly stunned by the clarity of Charles's statement. The king made it explicitly clear that moving forward, major institutional decisions regarding the family's public trajectory, charitable focuses, and long-term modernization strategies must pass through Catherine. He explicitly signaled to court officials that her instincts, her veto power, and her vision for the monarchy's emotional relationship with the nation are to be treated with the exact same weight as royal commands. For Prince William, this quiet shift is not a threat, but a profound sense of relief and shared strength. She spent years researching early childhood development, quietly laying the groundwork for her groundbreaking Shaping Us campaign, which has now become one of the most scientifically backed, influential charitable initiatives ever spearheaded by a royal. She learned the subtle mechanics of court politics without ever engaging in petty public rivalries or dramatic palace leaks. When crisis inevitably struck the royal family, from the bitter departure of Harry and Meghan to the loss of Queen Elizabeth II and the sudden cancer diagnoses of 2024, Catherine didn't crumble under the pressure. She became the absolute rock of the family. She managed to protect her children from media storms while standing as a beacon of serene, dignified strength for a grieving and anxious nation. Thank you for tuning into this massive breakdown on Crown Watch. What do you think about King Charles's secret power move and Catherine's elevated role as the core pillar of the royal family? Sound off with your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to drop a like on this video. And make sure to subscribe so you stay ahead of every major royal revelation as it unfolds. Till next time, keep watching The Crown.